When is it time to pump the brakes on your diet? When is it time to slow down the weight loss? And how much weight loss should you really be allowing yourself to have to really make it sustainable? Because that's the operative thing here. We want to be sustainable. I don't want to just lose the 100 pounds that I lost 10 years ago just to check a box and then go right back to it. Sustainability has been one of the bigger challenges for me, and I've spent a lot of the last 10, 11 years understanding it. Okay, so I want to open this video with some very simple math that might seem discouraging at first, but I think it's going to be enlightening for people that are really on a solid, intense weight loss journey, okay? Let's pretend for just a second, let's pretend that for a month, you ate 0 calories, consumed nothing, just for simple math, okay? Consumed nothing. And let's also pretend that when you consume nothing, the only thing your body's gonna burn is your body fat. That's not true. We obviously know your body's gonna burn muscle and other things, right? But let's pretend it's only burning fat. Now let's say your basal metabolic rate, the amount of calories you burn in a day, let's just say it's the average, which is 2,200, okay? So 2,200 calories directly burning from fat because you're not eating anything. Fat has 9 calories per gram, so it's pretty easy math to do. 2,200 calories divided by 9 equals about 244. Okay, so we've got 244 grams of fat being burned each day if you're eating nothing and only burning fat. Sounds like quite a bit, right? Well, when you multiply 244 by a month, let's say 30 days, you end up with like a little over 7,000, like 7,300 grams of fat. Sounds like a lot, but then when you actually back it out, you realize that's 16 pounds. So the maximum amount of fat you could burn in a month, if that's your basal metabolic rate, is only 16 pounds. 16 pounds is still a lot, but the point is that if you start burning more than that, losing more than 16 pounds in a month, there's a very good chance, very good chance you're burning up muscle tissue as well. Okay, now I'm not saying this to rain on your parade, I'm saying it to put it into context that you don't need to set these unrealistic goals. Set realistic things. Okay, now there's a lot of things that could change that number, right? Okay, don't get me wrong, it's very simple math. Anyhow, let's look at some other details. Will a decrease in metabolism occur? But how quickly does a decrease in metabolism occur? Because if you start restricting calories, yes, I promise you, your metabolism is going to slow down. Okay, it's going to adjust to the weight loss, but it's also going to go beyond that. There was a study that was published in the Journal of Applied Physiology. They found that when calories were reduced down to 1,100 calories, which really isn't too astronomically low, there was a 17 to 20% reduction in the metabolism in 13 days. 13 days. So that means if your normal caloric needs are 2,200 calories, after 13 days of dropping down to 1,100 calories, you just adjusted your metabolism to 1,800 calories in less than 2 weeks. Now the good news is in a short-term study like this, after eating food again and restoring calories, the basal metabolic rate restored. But that's a 13-day diet. Who's really doing a 13-day diet, right? It's not realistic. Maybe if you're just getting a quick shred in or something, but that's not what we're after. Most people are dieting much longer than that. So let's look at a longer 8-week study. So this study was published in the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition. It was more aggressive. It was a 500-calorie diet for 8 weeks. Now, those of you that are familiar with like the HCG protocols and things like that, 500 calories is kind of the medically supervised norm with that. They found that after 8 weeks, the metabolism had dropped beyond what was just associated with the weight loss. What that means is when you lose weight, your metabolism is going to slow down. You are a smaller unit. You are a smaller demand because you are a smaller body. So of course, your caloric needs are going to drop. But what they found is that their metabolism dropped much more below just the adjusted weight loss metabolism. That's not the weird part though. 1 year later, their metabolism was still just as decreased, even if they had gained weight back, which they more than likely did. So a year later, metabolism still decreased. There's even another study that I'll talk about a little bit later in this video that shows 6 years later, the metabolism is still decreased. And that was a study that was done with people from the Biggest Loser competition. So we'll get to that in just a second. Okay. You have to have sustainability. It is very important. And we're going to talk about the microbiome in just a second, and then I'm going to get into some more specific numbers that are still somewhat arbitrary, but what you should be paying attention to with how much and things like that. You need to have foods that you can rely on, foods that are good, but still taste good, but still treat you well, and still aren't super calorically dense. I did put a link for today's video sponsor, which is Thrive Market. If you're trying to just make better choices with your food, I think it's a good thing to check out. Okay, it's called Thrive Market, and there's a link down below. They're an online membership-based grocery store. So if you're trying something, if you say, okay, I don't necessarily want to do an 8-week diet, but I want to try a different lifestyle. I want to try keto, I want to try paleo, I want to try vegan, I want to make an actual change. It's a really interesting thing because you can like check a box for a specific kind of dietary pattern, and then it will give you all the foods. It's like a grocery store tailored to what you select in terms of filters. Unbelievable. Then it gets shipped to your doorstep in just a couple of days. Super convenient. So that link is down below, but the cool thing is because they're a sponsor, there is a 25% off discount for people watching this video, as well as a free gift, but you have to use that link down below. So check them out after we wrap up all the details and you get some hard numbers. The interesting thing is that the microbiome could be playing a role here too. We don't know a whole lot about it other than some of the data, so we can't necessarily apply like what exactly is happening. But there was a study that was published in the journal Nature. In this case, they took mice, they had them aggressively lose weight, then they restored their calories, and obviously the weight was regained. Okay, then they took the bacteria from obese mice that had lost weight. Okay, they extracted their bacteria and they put it into lean mice that were germ-free, which means that they were a clean slate to work with. So lean mice, as soon as they put the bacteria from the obese mice that lost weight into the lean mice, without even really changing food intake, gained weight. Really, because their metabolism adjusted based upon the bacteria. So much so that the researchers were able to calculate and even predict how much weight a given mouse would gain. It's really intriguing stuff. Again, we don't know the full picture though. So how much weight loss is too much? I mean, probably the number you've been waiting for. I'll honestly say, although it's arbitrary, I will say like 6 to 9 pounds per month is probably the max. After that, you probably want to reevaluate some things and slow things down. Increase your calories a little bit. Increase calories and add exercise to compensate, because exercise can restore the metabolism, okay? So you always want to look at that. You don't want to just drop calories and sit on your tail, right? Maybe increase those calories a little bit more and burn a little bit more through exercise, okay? You've all seen those big units, right? Big NFL players that are 300 pounds that, eat 6,000, 7,000 calories, but they're moving, right? So their weight isn't really changing. That's kind of what we're after. Don't think you should be a lineman per se, but you know what I'm saying. I also believe that 8-week diet modes are really important. Now, diet modes themselves, like having framework-specific periods of time where you're dieting, come with their own vices, right? I mean, really, we shouldn't be dieting. We should be making a lifestyle change, because if you lose 30 pounds in 2 months, does that make you a good eater? If I've never run a marathon before, but I managed to complete a marathon, does it make me a marathon runner? No, it makes me a marathon finisher. It doesn't necessarily make me a consistent marathon runner, right? So we have to look at that. Now, here's where I want to reference a study that was published in journal Obesity surrounding The Biggest Loser. It's fascinating. Okay, on average, during the competition of The Biggest Loser, subjects lost about 127 pounds. Okay, 127 pounds over 30 weeks. That is a significant weight loss in a very rapid amount of time. Okay, so they found that their basal metabolic rate had dropped by about 610 calories at the end of the competition. Big drop in their basal metabolic rate. Okay, they went back and they measured them 6 years later. 6 years later, the majority of them had gained back on average about 90 pounds, which is not unusual. Obese people that lose weight often do gain a lot or more of it back, right? So they gained about 90 pounds back. But even after the weight regain, their metabolism was still only a slight bit better than it was right at the end of the competition. So after 6 years, it had barely restored. That is scary. And the reason I'm telling you this is if you drop your metabolism down too fast, you will gain weight back faster and more aggressively than you did before. It is a classic case of really needing to delay some gratification to get a better, more sustainable long-term result. So 8 weeks is kind of that arbitrary, like, after 8 weeks, I think you're dieting for a little too long and you need to take a break. There was another study that was published in the journal Diabetes that found that mice that were obese, when they lost weight, they would aggressively overeat more than normal weight mice that lost weight. So what that means is if an overweight fat mouse drops a bunch of weight and a normal weight mouse goes on the same kind of diet, the overweight mouse will actually eat more and regain more weight than the normal weight mouse. What that means is that obesity at some point is driving this huge systemic tick to make them eat more when they lose weight. So the heavier you are, the more at risk you are of regaining the weight back. Isn't that wild? Additionally, another study published in the journal Diabetes, it found that fat cells remember the inflammatory response that comes with being obese. They found that even after mice lost weight, their adipose tissue still had a persistent influx of macrophages, inflammatory responses into the fat cell. The fat cell was still acting as though it was obese, triggering the same negative metabolic effects. So don't let that take the wind out of your sail and say, oh, if I lose weight, I'm still gonna have the same negative metabolic inflammatory responses. That's not the case. It means that if you rapidly lose weight, all of a sudden your fat cells are just like, I still think I'm an inflamed fat cell. So what is the number? I would say about 2 pounds per week is your goal. That is a heavy, aggressive goal for most people. 1 pound is still perfectly sufficient. Okay, 1 pound per week doesn't sound like much, but when you start adding it up, that's 36 to 40 pounds a year. Okay, if you lose 2 pounds a week, that's gonna be 8 pounds a month. Okay, you're still looking at a very significant weight loss of 80 to 100 pounds over the course of a year. Okay, I'd say that's perfectly acceptable. So as always, keep a realistic approach. Increase your calories a little bit and increase the activity. One of the hot tips that I will give you is monitor your steps. Watch your steps and try to get more steps in. It is generic as all heck, but this is coming from someone that really likes to fine tune and get into the nuancy biochemistry stuff. And I'm still telling you something that is so basic. Lifestyle, activity, movement. I'll see you tomorrow.